I made Aliyah about a year and a half ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I remember we sat together here in Tel Aviv and we kind of ideated like the initial, what Israel Tech would look like in its initial phases. But at the same time, I was also growing my business, LionRun. We have an office in Tel Aviv and in the US, between Chicago and New York. I just feel so lucky to be able to do what I love, supporting founders, and also supporting the Israeli ecosystem, because a big part of our client base is here in Israel.
At what point do you need a deck? Is it ever too early?
No, I think from the beginning you should have some form of a deck, because like I mentioned, it's like a puzzle.
What does LionRun do?
What do we do?
Yeah.
We prepare startups to fundraise.
There you go. So it's got to be that short.
Yeah. Usually the biggest challenge, one, is first getting the meeting. Once you
that's the hardest part, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually the hardest part, especially if you're going a more organic way. But you want to try to get a warm introductions, as
Intro. Welcome to another episode of Israel Tech. I'm your host, Yoel Israel. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe and sign up for our newsletter so you can stay up to date on everything going on in the Israeli tech ecosystem. And therefore, we can reach more people and continue to have a positive impact. Raab, thanks for being on Israel Tech.
Thanks for having me.
Now, before I introduce you, actually, let me introduce yourself. And then I want to talk about Israel Tech's founding story, or maybe you should say from where you came from, because you were actually very instrumental on getting some things off the ground. So first, who are you and why are we talking?
Yeah, so I'm Raab, the founder and CEO of LionRun Consulting. I founded LionRun about 4 years ago. We help startups prepare to fundraise, not only startups, but that's our main focus, also nonprofits, real estate funds, VCs and whatnot. I made Aliyah about a year and a half ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So now I'm here, loving every single bit of it, and just growing my business and enjoying life in Israel.
Boom. All right. Now, you're super impressive. So take us back. It is July 2025, and I think it was May 2023. We were on a Google Meet talking, and I was telling you about my idea for a brand called Israel Tech, right? And then it was and I don't know what we were doing. I was feeling very impulsive, which happens more than it should. And we were I wonder if the domain's available. So it's israeltech.com. It's for sale on GoDaddy. And they wanted $5,000, and I negotiated for $4,000, brought the domain. I was all right, it's happening. And then you helped actually build the website, help make a deck, and most importantly, believe it or not, Raab, we were looking to launch this with Nina, not Revital, who's behind the camera, not Revi. And and so here we are. And then why don't you tell us, maybe you want to talk about that back end story? I think it'd be interesting from your perspective.
Yeah.
And then in the end, why you then said you can't move forward.
So I remember you sent me a message and you're I have a really good idea. I think you're the perfect person to do it with. Let's chat about it. And we spoke about it, and for me, I'm super passionate about the Israeli startup ecosystem. That's literally where I live and breathe. I also love social media and media in general, and I think content is currency today. And I really resonated with what you were saying about how the way the tech ecosystem in Israel is, I guess, marketed today is not in a way that is fun and engaging, and people just don't care anymore about you have this press release, that press release, but people consume content on socials, and you're why can't we kind of bring Israel Tech or promote the Israel Tech ecosystem through socials? And I thought it was an amazing idea. I really resonated with it. And so at first I was I'm in, let's do this. So we kind of I remember we sat together here in Tel Aviv and we kind of ideated the initial, what Israel Tech would look like in its initial phases. But at the same time, I was also growing my business, LionRun, and we were expanding rapidly. And especially when you're at the beginning as an entrepreneur, you've got to be all in on what you're doing, or don't do it. And it's very difficult to have split focus. So in the end, I really wanted to focus on what I was doing with LionRun, and I knew you were going to be successful regardless with Israel Tech, which you have, and now you have Revital, and she's amazing. Shout out. So yeah, ultimately, I still resonate so much with what you guys are doing, and it's so important. We just have it's the same mission, just parallel paths.
I just said,
so we can promote each other.
You're at the top. And that's what we're doing here today. Yeah, so you're I got to scale, and then and I was give it a week to think about it. And I was like, we're putting a call in a week. It was a Wednesday to Wednesday. And then you were like, yeah, I really need to scale focus on this.
Yeah.
There's like, it's do or die time, and which is great. And then I reached out to Raab, who's on our ads team, who has our own successful video channel. And here we are. And here you are with us. So it looks like everything worked out. So let's talk about your business, LionRun Consulting, what we call LionRun. What is this business that you're scaling? What was it you were doing that I also thought that you would have been perfect to build Israel Tech too?
Yeah, so I started LionRun about 4 years ago. What we do is we work with typically early stage startups, usually seed to Series B is our primary target, helping them prepare to fundraise. So the struggle that I saw initially when I started LionRun was that founders were really struggling with telling their story, and they didn't have the proper materials throughout the fundraising process. They were really, really good at building their tech, an expert in whatever their field was, but really bad at the creative, the storytelling, even the business side of understanding what does an investor want to see when they're speaking to them. So, I started kind of doing this on the side early on, and then I just saw a huge growing demand. And I really saw this niche of, this challenge. And I was like, all right, I'm here to fill it. And so pretty much we have a very structured 3-phase process that we work with our clients. Every single company goes through that process where we do everything from the research and the strategy and building up we call it the foundation, because a lot of times they're missing that foundation. And then we have the essentials, which is phase 2, which is all the actual investor collateral. And then we have phase 3, which is very much focused on, okay, how do the meetings actually go, and being able to support the founders throughout that process once we finish all of like the groundwork. So yeah, since now we have like a team of about 10 and we're growing, we're actually hiring right now. Yeah, it's crazy. We have an office in Tel Aviv and in the US between Chicago and New York. And yeah, I just feel so like lucky to be able to do what I love, supporting founders and also supporting the Israeli ecosystem, because a big part of our client base is here in Israel. So yeah.
Before we continue, let me tell you about our partners, the Recruitery. Recruitery places go-to-market talent for early and growth stage cybersecurity companies. Recruitery specializes in recruiting and retaining top talent in global markets. If you're looking for a recruitment company to help your cybersecurity company close cultural gaps and find great talent on the ground that can help you scale, we recommend you also partnering with our partner, the Recruitery. And now, back to the show. What percentage of your client base is in Israel?
I would say probably like 40%.
Mm-hmm. It's smaller than I thought. I thought more than 70. I know you started there.
Yeah, I grew up in the U.S. My main base was in the U.S. And I only made Aliyah about a year and a half ago, but now it's growing.
It's going to be, I'm sure, that percentage.
Yeah, and now that we have the office here, we have the base here, we're doing events here. We did an amazing event 2 months ago, so yeah.
So let's go right into kind of some of like the bread and butter of your work you do. Pitch decks. Are they overrated? Are they, I think about pitch decks a little bit like, they're not the same, but like a CV. What's the point? Like, I imagine, they say hiring manager has a stack or several CDs, even a dozen if it's a small company.
Yeah.
And then you look at them for a minute. You don't get the personality. You don't get the vibe. You don't get the body language of the people. You don't get the passion. You get nothing. And you're just basically looking on paper. Do you think, is that right about, would you say that's right about, is that a problem with decks?
So yes and no. So there's kind of 2 aspects of it. Number one, if they're looking at, regardless if the founder or the CEO ends up actually utilizing the deck when they're in the meeting with the investor or whoever it is from a specific fund that they're meeting with, it is it's a vessel or like a channel that they use for the storytelling. It's almost like the exercise of building it out. At the end of the day, a pitch deck is the core of your business. Like what's inside of it, it's the shell of your business. So you have to be able to tell the story of everything that's included, because that's, at the end of the day, that's, like the core of what an investor is going to be looking at. And it includes it's like a puzzle. So if each slide is a piece of the puzzle. So regardless, you have to be able to speak on behalf of all of it, and the deck is the place where that information is housed. But number 2, a big misconception that a lot of founders don't understand is the actual process the VC goes through when they're in the due diligence process. So for example, they may not use a deck when they're in that initial meeting, let's say with the partner of a fund, and you may have a great meeting, but then after that, you don't hear anything. And why? Well, after you have a meeting with the partner, what does he do? He usually sends the materials to his team of analysts, so then do due diligence. And that's where you need to have the materials ready. That's where it's more important, because you're not meeting one-on-one with the analysts. You could have a great conversation and great connection with the partner of the fund, but essentially the person that's going to be championing the deal internally at the fund are the analysts, and that's where it's important to have those materials ready in your data room.
Got it. So, I do want to hear more about the process of the VC, but before we get to it, let's talk more about the decks.
Yeah.
At what point do you need a deck? Is it ever too early?
No, I think from the beginning, you should have some form of a deck, because like I mentioned, it's like a puzzle. And from the beginning, you need to be fleshing out each piece of the puzzle. So it's going to grow with you. It's a living, breathing document. So from the beginning, you should still be going through that, almost like that mental exercise of building out the deck and each piece that's included in it. Whether you use at certain points, you may or may not, but you should probably have it at least from the beginning, because again, it's the foundation of your business. Like the content, the storytelling, the strategy of your business, it's a place to house that.
So you were talking about actually going through the deck in an in-person meeting. Would you ever recommend, if an investor that you have yet to meet, let's say you're emailing, asks you to send them your deck? Is that a bad idea because you can't give over what you want, address questions? Kind of like you just send your CV in.
Yeah, look, there's different types of deck materials that you are supposed to have on hand for different scenarios.
Okay, I don't know this. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah. So essentially you have typically 3 variations of your deck for different points of the communication process with an investor. So for an example, you would have, let's say, a one-pager. One-pagers, they're pretty short, concise. It's actually sometimes the hardest thing for them to build out because it's so concise and it has to have the most important information. But it's usually used for more of like introductions. If you're sending it to someone and they're going to make an introduction to the partner or whatever it is. So that's the one-pager. Then you have a teaser deck, which usually should be no more than, let's say, 10 slides. And that's what you use for more conversational. So it's less content heavy, a bit more visual, meaning you need your narration to complement it in order for them to understand, like, really get the gist of the message that you're trying to convey. And then you have the reader deck. The reader deck is usually more extensive, and it's usually 20 slides, has a lot more content, and that you can send usually after you have the meeting. So I would say before the meeting, you shouldn't send more than, let's say, a one-pager and, let's say, the teaser deck, just so then they can get they want to make sure, you don't, at the end of the day, you don't want to waste someone's time. So they want to make sure that, okay, this is generally something that they're looking for, it's within their thesis and whatnot before you have the meeting. But you would also then use that teaser for the meeting as well to complement your narration.
As an immigrant, right? Me too. We both build our businesses in Israel, and you're actually helping, you said 40% of your clientele are Israelis to grow a business. What is so special? What do you think about growing a business in Israel? You did start in America. How would you compare the two?
I always felt, my heart was always here. And I always thought thank God, I was in a position where in the US where I felt like I could be very successful. If I put my mind to it, there were no huge barriers in front of me that as long as I put my mind to it, I would be successful in whatever I would be doing. But I always thought it was way more meaningful if I could be just as successful in Israel. If I could, let's say, achieve the same success that I would be achieving in the US, it would be 1,000, 1,000,000 times more fulfilling to do it here. And that's just because I knew my heart was here. So even though at the beginning I was really going back and forth, I was should I come? Should I be here? Should I be in the US? Better clients might be in the US, but I want to support the ecosystem here. At the end of the day, once I got here, once I started building my business here, it felt like everything started to fall into place.
Is that funny how that works?
It's crazy.
I obnoxiously pressured you to make Aliyah.
No, I remember.
You're so annoying.
I'm coming soon.
Plus, you kill it here. You do better here in the long term.
And there's just so much opportunity here. And I think that, this is the time to be able to build and for Liam to, bring their skill sets here.
Why? Why do you say that?
I think that and this is a topic I've been talking about a lot recently, is like how Israel is very much a meritocracy in the sense of you can come here and I'm part of my language, no one gives a shit about your like background. It's more of like, what value can you bring? Like they don't care about, oh, you went to this school and got this degree, you were in this club and whatnot. And like, I think that's wired in American university students' brain that you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to achieve, you know, a certain job.
You need to check boxes.
And yeah, and it's just so not true. And also now as an employer in Israel, I see it even more. Like I could care less about that. Like what I want to see is like someone who's ambitious, who's energetic, who's showing up and like putting in the work and providing value. It's literally all about providing value. And that's actually something that I saw and recognized early on. And actually what allowed me to take the leap to start LionRun, because I was like, as long as I'm providing value to people, then there's nothing that will like, there's no reason why this won't work. You know what I mean? Because, or like I won't be as successful as like, let's say if I was at a specific firm, because it's value driven. People pay for value. Mm-hmm. And like, if you can, you know, find a channel to be able to do that and find your niche, then, you know, that's, you know, to be able to grow a business, that's really the key.
Yeah, there's definitely too much of a focus on, not here, but like in the States, right? What school did you go to and all that? On my job descriptions, I put at the top, preferred no college degree, just to make it very clear where our culture stands, that we're very much a meritocracy. I don't care about your degrees and all that, and then they end up asking for more money and they don't even know how to think critically anyway, because they try to make up for the decision of going to college. But that's okay. I made that poor decision too. So let's say an immigrant. So a lot of people, what would you give advice to someone that, let's say a younger you, I guess like I did, but maybe that wants to move here, but they're like, how am I gonna make it financially?
Well, two things. One, either start getting on WhatsApp and messaging literally every single person you know, and just start getting coffee with people, because I know so many people who literally were here for 2 weeks, started getting coffee with like as many people as possible, and then things just fell into place because someone knows someone who knows someone who's hiring. And that's number one, if you were to want to go like work at a company. Or number two, I think Israel is the best place to be able to start your own thing. Because of that exact reason, it's meritocracy. Like if you're able to provide value in some way and monetize off of that, then there you go. So, and I think there's also a demand for English speakers in Israel to help Israeli companies in some capacity, and there's so many ways to be able to do that.
Like we do. Which founders, what do you think are probably, what struggle do they face and most people aren't aware of?
In terms of like what we see?
Yeah, in your opinion. I mean, you speak to so many of them.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few struggles, but it really comes down to, at least in what we do at LionRun and the niche that we kind of work within, is the storytelling aspect of what they're doing. Especially Israeli founders, they're so incredibly intelligent in whatever the field that they're working within, and usually very technical. But when it comes down to like explaining your business and explaining your company in a way that's digestible and relatable for someone to be able to understand, then that's really what we see the biggest struggle with. And that's essentially where we come in. Like, you know, have you ever been to an event and someone, you know, you're talking to someone and you ask, oh, like, what do you do? Or what does your company do? And then they just start talking. And then like 2 minutes later, they're still talking and you just zone out. Like, it's just the most ridiculous thing, right? Like, it's because for this exact reason that they just don't know how to, like, they'll be talking about some AI technology. No one cares. Tell me what you do. No one cares about the, you know, cloud algorithm, AI, crypto, blah, blah. Like, just tell me what you do. You know what I mean? Not how.
All right, show them how it's done.
Yeah.
Nina, what does LionRun do?
What do we do?
Yeah.
We prepare startups to fundraise.
There you go. So it's got to be that short. Yeah. Now I think our email tag is too long. Do you have different lengths? Do you recommend them give different, just like you said, for different stages, you have different decks? Are there different lengths of bios that you think that founders should have when they either want to say who they are or what they're doing?
Yeah, for sure. It depends on the context. Yeah. Sure. 100%. You always, also another aspect is like, depending on who you're talking to, you should always tailor your messaging towards who you're talking to and what they value.
Yeah, totally. Especially as a marketer.
Yeah.
So let's take it back to the founders looking for funding. How does someone know what's the right VC for them?
I mean, it does take a lot of research. Like you should do some, like, let's say you're just doing it on your own.
What should you research? Like, what should you look for?
You should be making sure that like whatever your company is fits that fund's thesis.
Like, but be specific. Like what?
So
personality, culture. Does it matter more about the partner more than the VC?
No, like for example, like what the firm invests in, what they're focusing on. So I'm sure you could do a lot of research and looking at like the partners' LinkedIn's and things like that and see what they're talking about and see what they're interested. Also in general on the website, what their check sizes are, what stage that they're investing in. If they lead rounds versus do follow-on rounds, all of that stuff is really important because you can reach out to, let's say, 100 funds, but like 20 of them aren't in, like their thesis doesn't fit where your company is, so you're just wasting your time.
Mm-hmm. But even then, I still find people still narrow it down to like a handful of VCs that fall in that. And let's say you go on meetings and you found them all to be positive. It's hypothetical. Just what do you think? What is it that makes a founder choose a VC specifically? I know also VCs choose suburbs.
That's an interesting, like...
Yeah, well,
it's a different perspective. Usually people think the other way around.
Well, right, I know people think the other way around, but I believe when founders go, they already have a bias, like, or preferences.
Yeah.
Who they want.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think that will come out in their behavior and it's far more likely they'll track that.
Yeah, so if it's from the perspective of, let's say, like a founder's preference on an investor, it's like a marriage at the end of the day.
Right.
Because, like,
that's what I'm saying.
They have a certain control over your company.
Right.
And you have to also trust that, like, they're going to be able to guide you in the right direction. And whatever they say their value added is actually something that's tangible, that will actually be a value add. I mean, I'll give you an example. A really good friend of mine, she's starting a really cool company, an education tech platform. And early on, she had an investor that like didn't even put in like a huge check, a small check, but was literally on her case every single day for like months until she put like him in his place and was like, look, like, you know, I'm building my company. I'll give you updates once a month, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like, don't call me, don't text me every single day asking for updates. Like, it's just ridiculous. You know what I mean?
They're not employed.
That's not let's say that's not typical VC fund, but that's an example. He was an angel investor, but that's just an example of like, you know, you have to make sure that the culture and not culture, but the values are aligned.
What are red flags, you would say, or unknown flags? Sometimes sometimes you're like, man, how did I miss those flags? I should have seen that. It was staring right in front of me. We've all seen this in relationships and business and whatever, right? So what are maybe some flags that people only learn after the fact? So maybe they can...
Like from a founder from a founder's perspective.
Yeah, and then maybe we'll take it from the VC side after.
I think it's a very similar like characteristics of like not being in it with the founder, like, and very similar characteristics of what I explained of like being on their case and not like from the perspective of, hey, I'm here to support you, not like get me X returns. Like, yeah. But at the same time, like I think every founder has like a different experience, like, and I think also there are amazing, you know, investors who support their portfolio companies tremendously.
So one of the things that founders consider VCs is they want a smaller or more boutique VC or a bigger VC. What are the advantages?
So actually, like something that's more specific to LionRun, what we've seen, we've actually been approached by like a handful of VC funds, usually more boutique funds, smaller, and they actually don't necessarily have like an internal value creation team that like support their portfolio companies for follow-on rounds. So we've actually been working very closely with a handful of VCs to kind of be that value creation arm, because actually one of the most common requests that one of our VC partners told us that they were getting from their portfolio companies was help with their pitch deck, they're like building out new and updated investor collateral, how to tell their story from, let's say, for their Series A versus then what they did for their seed round. So we've been working very closely with a handful of those types of funds versus like a larger fund usually has those types of resources potentially like in-house that can do that. I also think on another note, in terms of from the due diligence process perspective, it usually looks different depending on which fund.
Oh, interesting. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so typically, like, this is actually a huge misconception that a lot of founders don't actually understand, which actually ends up being a huge, like, hindrance for them. But they don't understand the actual process of what goes on behind the scenes like, throughout the due diligence process. So, like, let's say they have a great meeting with a partner of a fund. That partner is not the one that's going to be reviewing your whole data room and looking through all your documents and all the market research that you include and your business plan and your financial, like, they might look at your financials for sure, but, like, they're not going to be doing a huge deep dive to understand the industry, to understand where you fit. What they do, they send it to their team of analysts. Then it's the analyst's job to then dive into your data room, pretty much do deep research into where you fit within the market, and they're the ones championing the deal. So a big issue that we see from founders, and why essentially we work with founders to build out all these materials, is because if you go to an investor and they send it to the analyst doesn't have an organized, clear data room that has all the information and their research and whatnot that they need, then you're putting your trust in the analyst to be able to do all that research for you. Why would you do that? Like, why? Like, you're just, like, pretty much decreasing your chances that they would want. It gives no incentive for them to want to champion your deal. Versus if you come to them, you have, your business plan all laid out. It has all the market research. It has all the data that they need to then go back to the partner and say, yes, internal, or the investor committee, yes, this is something that we should move forward with. That's a way better situation than not having that. And then they're like, oh, like, it's just there's too much, like, it's too unorganized. And I have a lot of friends who are associates or analysts at VCs, and they literally are doing this process, and they're like, yeah, like, it's so messed up. Sometimes we get, like, the most unorganized, craziest data rooms, and it's like, so I have to sift through all that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why would you?
It's not just that. They might not come to the same conclusions that you may also.
Exactly. That's essentially why we do the work that we do. Like, we're not just doing pitch decks, but there's all the other materials that you need to support the deck in your data room. So, yeah.
All right. Well, if you need research or help, then Nina's got you covered. So, like, the process, in addition to the analysts, how exactly does it look internally? So, let's say you get an introduction to VC. You send through your information. They want a first interview. After that interview, let's say they are very happy with it. What happens? So let's say you meet with one partner, and then they take that and speak to other partners. Do they then have analysts look into it? Not yet. What does the process look like? Maybe help a first-time founder or people to see behind the curtain.
Yeah, so usually the biggest challenge, one, is first getting the meeting.
That's the hardest part, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually, like, the hardest part, especially if you're going, like, a more organic way. But, like, you want to try to get a warm introduction as much.
Intros,
yeah. Like, I think how the partner of the fund, like, handles that really depends on, like, how much they are interested and prioritize what your company. And a lot of times, if that fund or that investor is actually seeking the founder versus vice versa, like, they'll treat them way different. Like,
right.
There's some companies where, like, investors are fighting to get an allocation in the company.
Right.
So that's a very different scenario than vice versa. But let's say you were to just be, approaching them. Usually, let's say you get the meeting. Usually they'll say, okay, then send over your data room. They send it to their team of analysts to then start reviewing. They have an investment committee usually that they sit. I don't know how frequently they do that, to review everything. And then they'll say you're an egg. Usually the analysts of the firm or the associates, they'll get back to you even before. Like, they'll say, like, hey, it's not a really good fit. And what you should do 100% is ask for feedback.
Yes.
That's a super key. You want to make sure that you ask for feedback, for every no that you get, so you can continue to improve.
Are there times that one should or shouldn't take money?
For sure. So, my perspective, like, you should try to go as long as possible without raising, because at the end of the day, equity is the most expensive money that you'll be receiving, because you're giving a part of your company for that money, for the opportunity to be growing and expanding. So if you can bootstrap as long as possible, you should. And we actually see that, like, with a lot of our clients, they'll come in and they'll say, yeah, we want to raise, a $5 million round. And then after, we go through our process, which is usually, we discuss this a lot in our phase 1 process, like the foundation, when we're building out kind of like that, all the fundraising strategy and the budgeting and stuff. Usually they don't need that. It's just a very, I don't want to say trendy thing to like be like, oh, I raised $5 million for my company, whatever, like, and you get all the accolades that come with that. But usually we're like, build in steps, build in milestones, raise in milestones. So if you can prove that X amount of money is going to get you to this milestone, then try to do that. Try to, move to think more in increments when it comes to raising, and try to find the direct correlation between what is this capital going to be used for and how is it going to help me achieve X, Y, and Z versus I want to raise a $5 million round because I want to grow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Let's say you're bootstrapping, right? Like you recommend, which I generally, all things being equal, I think it's a good idea. But then there's a VC that you vibe with and they'd like to invest and you don't need the money, but you do think when you're ready maybe to really scale, you'll need the money. Would you still not take it? Isn't it better to take it when you don't need it? Aren't the terms better?
Not necessarily, unless you can prove that you don't want to take the money too early if you know you're going to hit a certain milestone before you raise, because then if you do hit that milestone, then you'll be able to ask for a higher value or command a higher valuation.
Got it.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you take that money too early and you don't need it and you haven't hit specific milestones, then you're kind of giving them a really good deal.
Right. Oh,
you know what I mean?
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So you actually took what I said and you flipped it. That's also a good point. So the one thing you're not as desperate, so you have better negotiating and leverage. You could always walk away. It's very easy to say, walk away, I'm not interested, because I also know you don't need it. That gives you leverage. On the other hand, if you may wait another year and your business has grown, then there's less equity you may give when you more need the money.
Exactly.
That's the point of game.
You can have a higher valuation.
No answer for you. Figure it out on your own.
It's really it really is dependent on your situation.
Totally. And also a lot of personality and kind of who you are.
And I have both friends and clients who are going through that situation right now, where it's like, okay, when should we raise? How much should we raise? If we wait a little bit and we can, get a few more customers or, LOIs in the pipeline, and we can get a higher valuation. But in order to get those LOIs or get those, early customers, we do need smaller infusions. You do need capital. So that's how you work in milestones. To work in smaller increments and maybe take a small, even raise $250, or $250K to get you to that specific milestone, and then you can go for a larger round.
So going forward, you're doing a lot in the tech ecosystem. What should we expect to see from you going forward?
Yeah, so thank God LionRun's really, really growing rapidly, and we're growing our presence here in Israel to be able to support, more Israeli founders in what we're doing. And, we're really looking forward to again, being able to expand our impact, because we've seen the difference. We've seen the proven track record of essentially, the companies that we're working with and the impact it has on them while they're raising their rounds. So that's number one. Our team is also growing super, super quick, and we're currently hiring for several positions across the whole company, both in the US and here in Israel. So we're going to be, all the, job postings are going to be up for the next few weeks throughout this summer 2025. And yeah, we're going to be doing more events here in Israel. 2 months ago in May 2025, we did actually a pretty big event.
That was a big fun.
Yeah, we had a whole investor panel, pretty much, peeling back the curtain for founders to really understand the investor perspective while they're fundraising. So we're going to be doing more of those, doubling down on that. We're going to be doubling down on content as well to hopefully provide more value for founders, and especially here in Israel. So I'm Israel Chai.
Thanks for being on Israel Tech. Thanks for helping get it off the ground.
Thank you for having me. It's so cool to see what you guys are doing, and I love seeing you guys' content. It makes me so proud for you.
Awesome. It really makes me happy. And thank you for tuning in. And if you haven't yet liked, follow and subscribe and share it with your friends and sign up for newsletter. That's 2 plugs in one video. I'm out, and thank you for watching.